Welcome to Leadership Where It Matters Most. The family is the most important institution in the world. The future of the church passes through the family. The church has the greatest mission of any organization ever. Go and make disciples of all nations. The family and the church. This is where leadership matters most. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Leadership Where It Matters Most. It's a real honor to be journeying with you every week through this podcast. We are recording, I believe it's podcast number 38 episodes that we've recorded. Now, we've been running the podcast for over a year, and the reason is because some of the podcasts were so good, we wanted to republish them, and we posted them twice, and we did take a little bit of a break in there as well. And that leads me to the first update for today, which is that we are going to be taking a short break of 3 weeks before we publish another podcast, and then we'll be back to our regular schedule. It's just the way kind of things lined up with various guests that we were wanting to interview. So yeah, a lot of good guests coming up, new guests to the show. So that's pretty exciting, and you'll be enjoying those conversations, I'm sure. And today's episode is unique because I actually do not have a guest today. So today I wanted to jump on here. It's going to be a shorter episode, but I wanted to just provide some words of hope and encouragement because there's some data that's out there that is trending in the right direction, as they would say. And I want to just share that with you in case you're not aware, make some comments about that, and even use some of the words that Bishop Barron spoke a number of years ago about some of these data trends and kind of build off what he said and offer some encouragement there. So that will be today's episode. So glad you're here. I hope it's an encouragement for you. So there's a couple of new trends that are happening out there. Some people are aware of them, others not. So I'm going to be sharing these with you as though you're not aware of them, just to give us a good foundation for understanding what's unfolding in front of us. Basically, in a nutshell, the two trends are that there are increasing number of adults entering the church this year and last year. And the second trend that is out there is that the so-called rise of the nuns, that is individuals who claim on various, census forms and that kind of thing, when they have the opportunity to talk about where they're at in their religious journey, that there's been over the years a growing number of nuns, those that are non-affiliated with any religion. Some would call themselves atheists, some would call them themselves agnostics, and others just say, I have no particular affiliation whatsoever. So, yeah, you've seen people like Bishop Barron making a lot of comments on this because the trending was quite pronounced. There were some that were doing these studies that predicted that by the year 2070, that the category of religious nuns would actually be the majority category in the United States. A lot of these studies that's been done are down in the States. So I'll be quoting those, and that's why I make reference to the United States. So yeah, a lot of the studies were showing that if the trajectory continues as it is unfolding every year, that by the year 2070, the majority of people would be nuns, non-affiliated. So where this kind of was first alerted that there's been a flattening of the curve, if you will, a cease in the ongoing trajectory of increasing numbers, comes actually from a study called the 2024 Cooperative Election Study. Now, this is a very large sampling size, and it's post-election data, and the inquiry is made about their religious status, and people are given the opportunity to, claim Catholicism, they're Protestant Christian, Jewish, et cetera, et cetera. So it's from that data that we've been seeing all of these trends. So essentially, what we're seeing is that the rise of the nuns is seemingly over. That from the year, I think it was 2008 all the way up to 2019, it was nothing but up and to the right, if you will. The increased number of people claiming to be atheist, agnostic, and nothing in particular. And then what happened in 2020 is essentially they all plateaued. And over the last 2 years, when it's been reporting, it's actually showing a decrease. If anything, there's a hint that things are actually moving very slowly in the other direction. So a number of people are claiming indeed that they're people of faith. Now, the other particularly hope-filled stat that's out there is specific to Catholicism and how we are seeing larger numbers of people actually becoming Catholic. So when the data is being reported, there's two categories of data. There's what they call catechumens, of course, and what they call candidates. So catechumens are those adults that are receiving baptism into the church. And then you've got candidates, which are people that have already received baptism in another Christian denomination, but they became confirmed in the Catholic Church. And so just some stats that are out there. And this particular reporting is from The Pillar, but I've seen things in Catholic News Agency as well. So an encouragement. For example, a lot of the dioceses in the States are seeing kind of, increased numbers. Some of them actually record numbers. So as an example, the Archdiocese of Baltimore has 778 people coming into the church, which is up from 668 people the year before. You've got an increase of about 25% in the Archdiocese of Boston. Detroit reports that they now have 977 people coming into the church at Easter, which is up from 793 people the year before. You see trends like this in Louisville, in Philadelphia, in San Francisco, in Washington, D.C., Cleveland, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee, Orlando, Florida. Orlando, I think they have 800 people coming into the church, which is an increase of almost 51% from the previous year, which is outstanding. In this particular data set, the Archdiocese of Vancouver, I think, was the only Canadian diocese that was actually reporting. And we indeed have 720 people entering the church, which is double last year's already record-breaking numbers. And you see some of the stats also throughout some of the dioceses in the UK. Sydney, as an example, they're up about 20% from the previous year. One of the stats I saw is that in France, I think there are 30% more adult baptisms this year over last year, and it was 30% last year over the previous year. So, both of these things are encouraging stats and data. All of us that are working in the church, see these numbers, and we take tremendous, we have tremendous hope in the numbers that are out there. So now what's interesting is that I wanted to just bring into this podcast some of the words that Bishop Barron had spoken, I think kind of prophetically. I think it was in 2019 when he was starting to really kind of champion this trend of the rise of the nuns, if you will. For those of you who follow Bishop Barron, you would have saw him speak about this a number of times. And he once gave a talk, and I think he actually gave this talk a number of times over a course of a year or two. But he gave a talk about sort of 5 strategies that we can employ within the church in reaching out to the nuns. So just in a nutshell, what he spoke about is the first thing was kind of reproposing the ministry of justice, if you will. And he went back to times of Dorothy Day and even of Mother Teresa. He said that we have always championed justice in the Catholic Church, and reproposing this work of justice to the next generation, to the nuns, was definitely something he was encouraging. And you see that kind of in, service and volunteering in things like soup kitchens or thrift stores, things like that are very, more typical. What I would say now, and this is even just 5 or 6 years later, that my sense on this is that a new wave of justice is really caring for the dignity of the human person, I think is something specifically that we can repropose as church. When you see the epidemic of loneliness and isolation, particularly with seniors, there's even, increasing trends of anxiety and loneliness among teens. They're all connected to each other digitally, but friendships aren't really there. Learning how to navigate and being strong witnesses to the dignity of the human person suffering in those ways, I think is another way that we as church need to get into this. I think that even people that are experiencing detransitioning is an area of care for the dignity of the human person that we're going to have to get into. Struggling with their sexuality, wanting to live a life of chastity, which we are all called to live, but to do it maybe when they have to recognize that they sometimes are struggling with same-sex attraction and things like that. So absolutely, we need to continue to propose things like serving in soup kitchens and areas of justice to come against that which oppresses human beings and all the rest of it. But there are new fields, if you will, that are opening up in terms of caring for individual people and the dignity of the human person in very complex situations. So I would propose that that's a new area that we're going to have to be comfortable wading into, because we are experts in humanity. The church has always had such a firm grasp on the majesty and the dignity of the human person. And we need to see that and be champions of that in every area of life. The second thing Bishop Barron was speaking about years ago is the role of beauty in, wooing the religious nuns into considering things of faith. And of course, he spoke about the traditional areas of beauty like art and literature and certainly liturgy. He even spoke about websites, things being beautiful, because that's often the very first place that people interact with parishes is in their websites, in their digital presence. And so I absolutely would support all that. If we think about what has changed in the social fabric, what are some other areas that we might want to be looking into in terms of proposing beauty? Well, I would speak very strongly that one of the great opportunities that we have, I think, in revealing beauty is in family life. I have said many times, perhaps on this podcast as well, that the missionary dimension of the family has never been more important than it is today. I think the beauty of married love, of sacrificial unity, teamwork, collaboration, friendship that you see in good, healthy marriages is a very strong witness via beauty in the world. I think the dinner table, the family dinner table, is another opportunity of manifesting this beauty into the world. The beauty of human interaction in the dimension of family life is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I think beauty, absolutely, I would agree. But standing on the shoulders of giants, of Bishop Barron and his word, I suggest that the beauty of the domestic church, the family, the home itself, even the simplicity and beauty of a family home is something that is a powerful way of reaching out to nuns, which means we have to invite them in. We have to invite them in. The third strategy Bishop Barron talked about years ago was intellectualism, if you will. I think he went so far as to say we have to stop dummying down the faith. We have to stop giving in to accommodating to the world because maybe they don't understand some of the doctrine, some of the moral laws of the church that we propose. And I would definitely agree that, the Catholic intellectual tradition has so much to offer. I would say that the deep catechetical insight that we have, 2,000 years of theological teaching, the magisterium, et cetera, it's just so many gifts. Frank Sheed, one of my favorite Catholic apologists, would often say, you cannot love something that you do not know well, and you're bound to know. Your knowledge of Christ is bound to be deficient if you don't understand the truths of the church that he established. And I agree with that 100%. But I also think in today's environment and in the social fabric, again, of today, that the humanities, the intellectual, robust knowledge of the humanities, psychology, even politics, business, there are things that the church can teach on these matters. Some of the great social doctrine of the church has specific applications for those in business, and it is beautiful and brilliant. But speaking into the psychology of the human person, there's so much that the church has to offer. What I would suggest is that this is not just a cerebral exercise, that truth is ultimately helping us be doers of the word, not just hearers and understanders, but doers of the word. So bringing the great intellectual tradition into more practical applications like business, psychology, politics and like is another, I think, opportunity. We should not be ashamed of what the church can teach in all those areas, because she has much to say after 2,000 years of deposit of faith. The fourth thing that Bishop Barron spoke about is in mission. And he said very beautifully that we need to turn every parish into a missionary society. And again, I agree 100%. I mean, much of my work, both in the Archdiocese and elsewhere, is about helping parishes become renewed, helping them become a spiritual impulse capable of transforming everything. Absolutely. That's very, very important. Building on that, I would suggest two things. First of all, the locus, I don't know if that's the right term, but of the individual himself or herself as a missionary outpost. Pope Francis, back in the 2018, when he had, in October 2018, I think it was the extraordinary month of mission. And he was speaking about the periphery, right? Getting to the periphery. And are parishes most organized and established to reach the periphery? I'm not sure, but the individuals are, because it is through the relationships that we have with people in our places of work, in our travels, in our community engagement, exercises. All those areas are arenas for the new evangelization. And in our relationships, we make the periphery proximate, and equipping individual lay Catholics in particular is an area where we just desperately need to put more time and energy and resources. 99.9% of the church is laity. The vast majority of those people do not spend their time in a parish. They spend it in the world. They spend it with their families. They spend it in activities of family domestic life. They spend it at work. If we have a massive shift, I think the great opportunities have a very significant shift of, developing, I think Father Michael Sweeney talks about this, but an imaginative vision for the lay apostolate in the world. Not organized at the parish itself, but a robust ministry of presence, ministry of the word and ministry of life, witness of life and word in their normal everyday life. We could see significant renewal, indeed revival. We need to have a imaginative vision for the lay vocation in the world. And if we embrace that, we could see very significant fruit through our lives. The last thing Bishop Barron spoke about is just the new media. And I mean, I would say we're still sort of in that realm. Absolutely. There's been such a proliferation of podcasts and websites and, different forms of media that have such a powerful way of witnessing to the faith and evangelizing those who are not yet in the church. I would suggest, one area for sure that needs to evolve, and we need to embrace it lest we get left behind, is in the whole world of artificial intelligence. I mean, I've used some of those mediums and tools, and they are absolutely unbelievable. I'm going to have Matthew Sanders on the podcast soon, and he's launched into that ferociously. It's wonderful, but he started Magisterium AI and a couple other platforms that he's going to discuss on the show. But, just utilizing AI in a positive way is something that I would add to what Bishop Barron was speaking about. It's hard to believe that these 5 strategies that I'm quoting from him, I think he gave these in a series of talks in 2019, and just how much things have changed in the world of AI and in new media. So now here's the thing. We see these trends with, the flattening of the curve, the trajectory of the nuns. We see, way more adult baptisms this year over last year, and it's all around the globe. The one caution that I have as I think about these things is the caution against hubris. It's the caution against hubris, which is an overconfidence in knowing why something happened. An overconfidence that would suggest that, of course this is going to happen. This is the church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Of course, we would see this. And I think, the only thing worse than not learning the lessons from failure is not learning the lessons from success. I don't think anybody can speak with any degree of authority on why we're seeing the trends that we're seeing. Some of our people involved in lay formation could speak to, there is a slight increase in the number of adult baptisms in parishes that have kind of really adopted a pre-catechumenal way. Things like Alpha, Rescue, the Search being used as part and parcel within the RCIA program. But I don't know if you can actually make a statement of causation. There could be correlation, but not causation. But I guess what I'm suggesting here is that one thing we have to realize when we see these significant movements and we see the fruit and the actual metrics showing more adult baptisms, showing kind of a halting of the numbers of nuns, no longer increasing. The one thing that we can say for sure is that the Holy Spirit is the principal agent of evangelization. I was recently in St. John's, Newfoundland, and had the opportunity of doing a men's retreat out there. And it was an experience of cooperating with the Holy Spirit. When I would be on break and these men would come up to me and they would tell me their story and how it was so perfectly aligned to experience what they experienced on the retreat, the way it was organized by the locals and all that kind of thing, the emphasis on the sacrament of confession, of adoration, of personal prayer, all these things. It was like it was perfectly designed. And I think, of course it was. This is the Holy Spirit. He is the principal agent of evangelization. So I guess what I'm saying is that, once again, it comes back to how important prophetic listening is to cooperate with the Holy Spirit in the mission and the ministry of evangelization is to take our lead from him. It is to be continually in prayer and understanding what he is up to and be involved in that work. To bear fruit, which is the word that Jesus gave us in the Gospel of John, to bear fruit actually means, in the original language, to support the work already in progress. To support the work already in progress. One of the works that I see happening, particularly with young people, and I would say even more focused, particularly on young men, is this desire for meaning. I think, and other commentators have said this, so maybe I'm just being an echo here, but I think part of the reason why we're seeing this, halting of the rise of the nuns is simply that people have been exposed to so much that the world has to offer, and it has not led to any sense of deeper satisfaction or meaning in their life. They are as connected as you can be. They have experienced so much in new media, the immediacy of finding satisfaction. I mean, you can go on Amazon and order something and have it delivered within the hour. And you can have so much connection. I was texting my family on the way home from 38,000 feet, and it was immediate communication. But all of these advances in technology, in medicine, in new media, and all of that have not led to higher realities of meaning and satisfaction in life. And as C.S. Lewis said, if you have all that this world has to offer and still feel wanting, you have to conclude that you're made for another world. And so, yes, the numbers, the metrics are there. It's incredibly encouraging. I think we have to be very docile to understanding the reason why, that we have to understand and learn the lessons of success. And the Holy Spirit is on the move. He is the principal agent of evangelization, and we need to cooperate with him. Him who knows all people, him who knows what is needed. And that is what our commitment must be. So, just some random thoughts. I didn't have much time to prepare these, but I wanted to jump on here and offer a couple of trends that are encouraging to us as people of faith, people committed to the church and to family, to evangelization and renewal around the world. So hopefully this has been an encouragement to you, hopefully giving you some things to think about and pray about. So until next time, and again, just a reminder, the next episode won't be out for a few weeks, but I wish you all a very blessed remainder of your Lent, and may we celebrate with great faith and joy the resurrection of Jesus Christ that changes everything. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you soon.